for all the people out there with a dream that just want to be seen. Yeah, my dream's bigger than the average.
Welcome to episode 11 of the Be Seen podcast. Today we have a special individual, a gentleman who crosses over in fields, Pat O'Connor from LA, a gentleman who was first a journalist, then a screenwriter. Pat, it is an honor to have you on today. Thank you.
It's an honor to be here, Jonathan. Thank you for having me.
The honor's all mine, Pat. I say this to all the guests, the honor's all mine. Tell us your journey, brother. Share it with the world.
So I grew up out here in Los Angeles, California, pretty much. And I wanted to, as a kid, I loved writing. I would always, in school, if I hadn't read the assignment, I was able to write it in a way that basically was able to take advantage of my Irish BSing roots and make it look like I did know what I was talking about. And I realized I was able to get a couple past the teachers, and I thought, maybe this writing thing could be something I could do full time. And I grew up loving sports, played sports, coached sports. So I thought, you know what, I want to go to Pepperdine University. I'm going to be a sports journalist. And when I got there, we had our own. It was a very smaller school compared to some of the bigger universities out here in the U.S. But we had our own working television station on campus. And right when my freshman year started, you were able to get in. You were able to borrow a camera. You were able to borrow microphones, lights. We had computer editing systems similar to the ones that they use still today in film and TV. And we learned how to do all that stuff. And I kind of realized, by doing that and going out and doing stories, I kind of really liked the editing process, the writing process more than actually the reporting process. So about my last year at Pepperdine, I decided, instead of going into journalism, maybe I want to try screenwriting. Maybe I want to try something more creative. And my teacher instructor at the time said, well, the class you'd need to graduate is not being available this semester. And I'm like, please don't make me come back for one class to graduate. And she said, well, we'll do a class project together, but it'll be intense. You're going to have to write a screenplay with me in 15 weeks. And I'd never written a screenplay before. So she kind of taught me, the basics, gave me a couple books to read. And she said, by the end of the semester, I want a rough draft. Well, I loved it so much. Halfway through the class, about 7 weeks in, I had a rough draft. And by the end of the semester, I had a final draft. And I got about a call from her. She was also a producer. And then I got a call from her about a week after I graduated from college. And she said, this script's really good. I want to option it. And I think we can get it made. So that was my first real taste of Hollywood, my first Hollywood meetings. I got to meet with a potential director, some production people, and kind of got my feet wet. Nothing ever happened with that script. I got a grand total of $1 for selling it, but that was my taste. I was now a quote unquote professional writer, and I was like, this is what I want to do. But I still needed to pay the rent. So instead of getting a waitering job like many aspiring actors and writers and musicians do out here, I was like, well, I have a degree in journalism still. So I got a job at a local TV station in Los Angeles and put my journalism to use, and eventually became a television news writer, producer out here for years. And that transitioned from hard news, which can be very depressing and very hard to deal with on a daily basis. They eventually moved me to sports, which I was so grateful for, because now I got to watch, Los Angeles Laker games and get paid for it. I got to watch football games and get paid for it. And so I kind of was doing that on the side. And what the great thing was, that was a night job because our newscast was on at 10 p.m. at night. So I had my days free to take meetings, to write, to do whatever I wanted on my screenwriting career. And for 10 years, I did both. I sold my first script while I was still working there and took 2 weeks vacation to go on the set and shoot it, and still was getting paid for my other job while this movie was being made. And then eventually back in 2010, Disney hired me to write full-time on an animated series, and I finally left. But I still I love journalism. I dabble my feet in both. So I've still kind of, bounced back between both worlds.
That's incredible. You get your script optioned when you're at college, which you achieved 15 weeks first time. That shows what
it was option for $1 whole. I think I still have that dollar somewhere. I don't have the heart to spend it. I'm like, this is my first money that I've earned, so I don't want it to go away.
Yeah, that's special. That's so fascinating. In terms of what was the allurement to screenwriting? Or let's go a step back. What was the first allurement into journalism? What was the first allurement there?
I I grew up. It's funny. I've had this conversation with several of my colleagues that got into. And my best friend is a actor, and also I met him at the TV news station. He was pursuing. He was doing the same thing I was, except his passion was acting, mine was writing. But both of us had journalism backgrounds, and I used to grow up. This was before the internet, before really TV. The only way to get information about your favorite baseball team or soccer team or football team was the local paper, because a lot of times these games were on when I was at bed, or they were on a channel that we didn't have on TV. So I would like scour through the sports page of the newspaper to find out, did we win, did we lose, and I would read the articles to see what other teams that I liked, other players. And then I started getting interested in the newspaper aspect of like the other stories. And my parents are the most apolitical people like you could ever imagine. Like we never talked politics growing up. I to this day don't know who they voted for elections, which is good, I think, especially the way the things the world is right now. But my dad and my mom were both always so up to date on whatever was happening in the world. You know, they're like, oh, did you hear about this happening in London or in Japan or this or there? And so I was always amazed by that. I always thought it was kind of cool. Like they could have conversations about anything. And my parents are big newspaper people. So I started reading the newspaper. And even though I was young and I didn't really understand a lot of what I was reading, I kind of started to get a background of, oh, this is how the world works. This country doesn't like this country, and there's some potential problems here, or this is a big new product that's coming out in the world that could make things really cool, or this or that. And, you know, even the weather, like, oh, it's going to be sunny next week. So I kind of learned, like, I really liked that aspect of it. And just having access to that information, I think was really cool. And now I think now that you have the internet, you have things like social media and Twitter, you know, that the ability to get that information from where it happens to the world now happens almost instantaneously. Whereas before, you know, you'd have to go, you'd have to write a story, you'd have to get it printed, you'd have to, you know, that's kind of really been truncated. And so I really just liked the idea of knowing a lot of things and having access to that information and telling a story. And a lot of times context matters. And this is something that's true in screenwriting too, is you could have a really, really cool idea for a story, but what's the audience's entryway into that story? It has to have an emotional aspect as well, like either through a character, either through a situation or where it's being set. Like you have to be able to hook people in. Journalism is the same way, you know, like a car crashed into a house, that's terrible, but why should we care? You know, was it the White House? Okay, now that's a big deal. Was the car driven by somebody famous? Was the car a self-driving one that the self-driving took over and crashed? Like, what's the reasoning behind it? And there, in journalism, you hear about the 5 W's, like the who, what, the when, the where, and the why. Like those are the things you're supposed to hit in your story. The way I was taught was the main point, the biggest W is the way. The way you tell the story is the most important. And that's true of screenwriting too. Like you could have a story, a romantic comedy. We've seen tens of thousands of romantic comedies, and we will see tens of thousands of more. What makes yours stand out? Like, what are you telling your story in the way that you tell your story is the thing that's going to separate it from all the others. Other stories might have better plots. They might even have better characters, but the way you're telling that story, that's what's going to separate you, in screenwriting. And it's the same in journalism. And here in LA, there are 6 other television stations that are competing with us, the station I worked at. If there's a big story, all 6 of us are sending reporters, producers, writers to the scene of that report. People watching at home, they could flick through the TV and get that information from anywhere. Why are they going to choose us? What is it about our story that is going to make them say, whoa, they're getting the details of this story better than anyone else? And that's kind of what we focused on. And that's kind of what I focused on. And even when in the journalism field, that transferred over when I was writing screenplays, as I realized, oh, like you could just tell them what happened, but that's not the story. Like the story is, why did this happen? What is special about this story that's going to make people care? And you need to answer that question every single page you write as a screenwriter, as a novelist, as whatever it is that your passion is for writing. Why are people going to care? Why are people going to read this and be like, wow, I need to read the next page. I need to read the next page. I need to read this to the end. And that really helps me in my journalism thing. It crossed over to my screenwriting. I think it made me a better screenwriter.
Yeah, that's really interesting. That's really interesting. A couple of things you mentioned, like obviously, with social media, you can get it instantly. You can get a line of text instantly, but the article, the strength of the story still needs to be there. Would you agree with
Yeah.
that?
Oh, 100%. I hate this phrase. There's this whole thing. We're citizen journalists. I'm like, no, you're amateurs. You don't know how to get a story, and you have an agenda that you're trying to push out to the world, and you're not getting the context of the story. You're not getting the facts of the story. We don't want citizen surgeons. We don't want citizen lawyers. Like, if I break my leg, I'm not going to go to somebody on Twitter. How do I set this? I'm going to go to a real doctor who spent years and years studying how to do this, who's going to be able to tell me what are the potential complications of this and knows how to do it. Same with a car mechanic, same with a lawyer, same with an accountant. Like, you're not going to trust amateurs to do all this stuff. So we shouldn't trust journalists that aren't, professionals either. I know it seems like it's not a skill. It is a skill you need to learn, because you need to be able to show both sides of a story. Even if it's a story, even if your heart of hearts, you're left or you're liberal, or you're conservative, this or that, you might want the story to be one way, but that's not how you have to tell the story. You have to show both sides of the story. You have to give the context to people. One of my favorite stories from early in my journalism career, there was a big controversy here in Los Angeles several years ago. They were trying to legalize gay marriage and hadn't been legalized yet. And so there was a big fight over that for years and years and years. And the city of West Hollywood out here, which has a very high gay population, they decided to have a mass civil union ceremony for all the people that couldn't afford it. Like, you could come down to the city hall, we'll marry you all, or give you civil unions, which was the highest they could do at that time. And so we sent a reporter down to cover it. And we had the audacity to show two men kissing on our air. Well, the second we did that, our phone lines lit up from viewers. So because I was my story that I had written for the reporter, I was like, oh man, I better go answer the phones. And I answered 10 phone calls that day. 5 were from viewers that were furious. How dare you show two men kissing on our air? My children were watching, and this and that. The other 5 were from gay people saying, thank you. Thank you for telling our story and actually showing our story and giving us this credence. And I remember hanging up the last phone call and thinking, okay, so 5 people hate us and 5 people love us. We've done our job. Like, we're even. Like, we told this story as even as possible. Like, we have just as many people hating us as loving us. Then you've done your job. Like, you've done the right thing. Like, and in a perfect world, you're going to tell a story and you're going to anger both sides. Well, how come this didn't happen? You're going to just, hey, here's the information. You do with that what you will. And I feel like a lot of times on social media that gets lost because, there might be an explosion somewhere. Twitter will pass out details. Number one, we don't know if those details are accurate, because especially if it's a chaotic situation, those details change. You're relying on witness testimony. I saw 2 guys here. Well, turns out there was only 1 guy and 1 guy went to help. And so now you're like, all the details change because it's chaotic. It's not like people are lying, but it's, you have to kind of temper what your information is, and you shouldn't send it out until you're 100% sure it's accurate. And in Twitter, it's like, we got to be first. We got to get this information up first. And if we're the first ones on the scene, even if we're wrong, nobody's going to care. And that always bothers me. So I feel like there should still be a place for really good journalists who know how to work stories, who know how to get sources, who know this information for real and can get it out into the world. And ideally do it in a way where you're going to go right down the middle. You're going to say, here's what it is. Here's what one side is saying about it. Here's what the other side is saying about it. Story's over. Take it where you want to go.
You were speaking earlier about your parents and having an understanding of what was going on in different countries. Did they read the tabloids from these countries, or were they getting it from one Central American tabloid?
We had our local newspaper, which was kind of for our area. We had the Los Angeles Times, which was for Los Angeles, which is obviously one of the biggest cities in the United States, but also covered really the entire country. And then my mom always got the big tabloids. Star Magazine was a big one for us. And what's funny is I remember that was where I first read about, this was in the 1990s. That was where I first read about Donald Trump, because he was always in the, the tabloids about, oh, he's getting married to this woman now, or he did this or that. And it was funny. And now he ended up becoming our president. But so the celebrity gossip, she was always big into that. We definitely did get, we had our share of the appropriate news and then also the inappropriate news. But I remember that growing up for sure.
It's not a bad balance. At least it gives you balance between the two.
It was fun too.
In terms of that, with yourself as a journalist, what I was leaning towards is, are you aware of an article that's maybe put out, from a newspaper or broadcasting outlet in America, the United States, but also the same article or news that goes out in another country? Because do they tend to differ? What has happened?
Yeah, And this is what I tell people whenever I get somebody who's never worked in news telling me like, oh, well, you're biased, you're this or that. I say, you have to understand the Associated Press is like the global standard for news. They have reporters everywhere. And every single media outlet in the US, sometimes in Europe, they have Reuters, which is another organization that gives their information to everybody, Reuters and the Associated Press. But like Fox and MSNBC here in America, MSNBC is very liberal, Fox obviously very conservative. They both get the same story from Associated Press. Like most times they don't have reporters on the scene in Ukraine or in Afghanistan or in London or wherever a big story will happen. The Associated Press does. So the Associated Press has contracts with both places. They send the same exact story, the same exact information that's been gathered by very good journalists to both outlets, and then both outlets spin it. MSNBC spins it to the left, Fox spins it to the right. And I tell people, like, if you really want unbridled news, sign up for an Associated Press account and you will get it directly. You'll get the same information these outlets are getting before they put their spin on it. It might be very boring because Associated Press is their job is like, here's the facts, man. I'm telling you everything literally everything I know about this story is going to be here. And sometimes it's pages and pages long, whereas most of us have short attention spans and it's like 15 seconds, man, just tell me what's going on. And so that's kind of what happens. And you'll see that in really in every country, because especially if it's a big global story, like right now we have a war in Ukraine. That's different for the people in the UK. They're sending certain supplies over. America's sending certain supplies over. Germany, there's more of a controversy about should they send supplies over. France, this and that. So that story, and obviously the people in Ukraine, those informations are a lot different for them and a lot different importance for them than it is for us here. So it's funny when you see the Associated Press, like there were times where I will, when I was working here, I would do a story and our market was pretty balanced between left and right. So I kind of had to play every story down the middle. You then see the same story on Fox and they took a completely different direction. And then you see the same story on MSNBC and it was taking the complete opposite thing. And I was just like, did we all read the same article here? It's the same information, but it is funny. And sometimes it's true where you're getting that context. It's like a story for a London audience should be different for an LA audience because we have different things that matter to us. So I think that's okay as long as the truth, focusing on different aspects of the story is one thing, but having different versions of the truth is not. And that's the one thing I wish people would stop doing. But there are still good journalists out there who are trying to play it down the middle.
Yeah, you see, that's crazy, because I was going to lead on to ask the world, a portion of the world feels that the media creates an agenda, depletes their emotions. You were talking about hard news.
Mm-hmm.
And they've gone away from that.
Yeah.
Gone away from it because they're sick of it. Other people, say parents wise, it's a religion to them. At a certain time, they sit down to watch the news.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. Why do people feel like there's an agenda? You've said that too.
Yeah, I think because the people they watch are telling them there's agenda. It's become very tribalistic here. It's okay I have one of my best friends. I'm more on the liberal side. He is the most staunch conservative I know. We've been friends for 25 years. We have had multiple political arguments almost on a daily basis. And then we go grab a beer after. It's like, it's over. It's like, he knows his side. He has his side. And, I don't know if we've ever changed the other person's mind on a particular idea, but it's given me context. Like, oh, that's why you feel that way. And he said the same thing about me. So we've got a greater understanding of the other side, so to speak. So I've always thought that was more people should have people like that in their lives. But unfortunately today we don't. You have a viewpoint of how you see the world. You watch the media that fulfills that viewpoint, and the people that are on that viewpoint on TV or on Twitter or wherever you're getting your information from, they are telling you the other side's lying to you. They're trying to do this or that. And they'll give you half of a story to kind of, validate their point. And it makes you feel more and more fervently that I'm right. They're wrong. It's us versus them. And they're doing this and that. And now you start believing anything that those people say. And it kind of, it creates divisive lines. So, the reason that people feel the media has an agenda is because the people they listen to are telling them that the other side has an agenda, and ignoring the fact that they too have an agenda. They're just not telling you about it. And so it's very frustrating for me, coming from a journalistic background, to see that now. And I feel like, we've had to have security on we'll send somebody to cover a movie opening here in Hollywood. We've had to send security because people see somebody standing with a microphone and a camera, and they're the media, they're the enemy. And we've had people get attacked out here, and it's just really, really scary. And I do hope, things will start to calm down, but I don't know. I'm very nervous about the future of journalism in America and especially in the world, unfortunately.
That's crazy. It's crazy because people are forgetting you're a human being. And obviously you are in sport. You're one of the cool guys in the eyes of the public. You're that guy. But that's terrifying. People forget you're human. People forget that you're another guy that's trying to pay the bills.
Right.
But people are upset because they feel there's agendas. Are there agendas being pushed? In a sense, are there agendas actively being pushed into news?
For sure. From where I worked, never. In 10 years there as a writer producer, I was never told to make a story more liberal or more conservative. Not once. Most local stations are like that because in Los Angeles, LA County is very, very liberal. Orange County is very, very conservative. We had viewers in both places. If we played a story too liberal, we would lose the Orange County viewers. If we played a story too conservative, we would lose the LA County viewers. And local news, we can't afford to lose any viewers, because it's a very hard, it's kind of a dying thing. So we would have to play stories down the middle. And a lot of, that was our coverage area. A lot of local stations around the country are like that. It's really the cable news outlets where they're the ones pushing agendas because they don't need to hit the entire country. They don't need to get viewers from everywhere. They just need to get their people to watch religiously. And like you pointed out, they do. They watch religiously to get that agenda, to get it from Tucker or from Rachel Maddow, whoever your site is. That's who you're going for. So those places are definitely pushing agendas because that's their viewers. If you're writing a comedy, you want you're not going to write a comedy that doesn't make people laugh because people go to a comedy expecting comedy. So if you're a comedic writer and you write a movie that's not a comedy, people are going to be like, what the hell is this? Why did I buy this? So you have to give the audience what they want. And your audience on those places, guess what? They want hard right-wing stuff or they want hard left-wing stuff. And they don't want nuance. They don't want context. They don't want to be told, hey, we might be wrong about this, but no, this is us versus them. And that's the side that they're pushing. So yeah, those outlets are definitely pushing agendas. And on Twitter and stuff, that they're not even lying about it. It's in their bio. They'll say right-wing journalist or left-wing journalist. Like they're not hiding the agendas anymore. It's right there in your face. So it's just a matter of, as an audience, you have to say, you know what? I want to find somebody that's going to tell me the story like legitimately down the middle, who doesn't have an agenda, who really is going to give me the context to the story. Even though I might lean more left or right, I want to be able to get this right down the middle. So it's really up to the audience to stop listening only to your tribe, to stop listening to people that are only pushing the agenda you want to hear. And if we start doing that, enough of us, then the people that are pushing this will have to adjust because they're going to lose money. They're not going to have the audiences anymore. So there are agendas being pushed in audience because that's what the audience wants. And so it's up to us as audience members, as consumers of information, to be better and to say, no, we don't want to do this anymore. We're going to only listen to people that are going to tell us both sides of the story. And that's going to be hard. That's going to be a real hard challenge.
Yeah, for sure. I've always felt in journalism, it's a bit like being a police officer or being a firefighter, a doctor. You have to be able to switch off from your emotions as you're viewing things objectively. Yeah, it's a tough job in that sense to do. You mentioned about in a screenplay, writing with emotion. You have to feel the emotion, surely, to bring the audience in to feel that same emotion. How do you do that? How have you been able to achieve it? I know you've done a lot of journalism in sport. You've done less journalism from what I can hear in the other area, the hard hitting stuff. Would that be correct to say?
I spent the first 10 years of my career doing hard journalism and then really the last 10 doing sports. So I've kind of gotten both sides.
Wow. You really are down the middle. You're down the middle, guy, balanced.
I've been very lucky. It's funny with screenplays, like my friend, you always say, that's like, when I read your stuff, I want to see blood on the page. Like, I want to know that the stuff I'm reading is stuff you've experienced, stuff that you've gone through, because that's going to make it more realistic to the audience. The funny story I'll tell is the first script I sold, it was called The Breakup Artist. It was made into a romantic comedy back in 2008. I had actually, I wrote the first draft of that in 2004. I optioned it to Disney when I was there, and we got really close to getting it made. Never happened. 2 years later, I optioned it to, at the time, it was Kate Hudson's company, and we were like super excited. We thought she was going to star, and then it just kind of died on the vine there. Nothing ever happened. I went through a horrific breakup the next year, like probably the worst breakup that I had had at that point in time. But the story, my script was called The Breakup Artist. It was about a woman who gets paid to break people up from relationships. So guess what? I had a gold mine of stuff that had happened to me, that I experienced, that I had said. I put all of that in the page. I mean, I rewrote the script with all this stuff that had happened to me, and it really took the script to another level because it made it more realistic. It made it more unique because I was putting in the story things that happened to me, things that I experienced, things that I had said. And it, within a year, within like a month, really, the script had sold and got made, and we were in production because it really was the thing that helped take it to the next level. So it's funny with journalism, it's take off your emotions, just tell the story, tell it what happened, get the emotions of other people in the story that witnessed it maybe, but keep your emotions out of it. With screenwriting, no, do the opposite, man. Get all your emotions in there, get all the stuff, make it real, get blood on the page. That's what's going to make your script stand out. And it's like, I grew up watching, like a lot of kids, I loved watching Star Wars because it took me to a brand new world and to see all this cool stuff happen. Now, comic book movies do the same thing. You can do the same thing with, an independent little emotional movie about, a couple years ago, Moonlight won the Best Picture Oscar. It was about a gay Black guy in the South. And I thought, wow, you know what? It must suck to be a gay Black guy in a really urban city where, that kind of thing is not, evolved. It took me to a brand new world, just like a Star Wars movie did. And it was a very tiny emotional thing. And the people that wrote it put some really unique, like, character stuff in there. So you can do that. Like, you don't need a huge $1 million special effects. If you have a really interesting character going through a unique experience that most people have never experienced and probably never will experience, either because of a different demographic background, a different socioeconomic background, a different part of the country or part of the world, write about that person, because it's going to take the audience to a brand new world in the same way. And in an ideal place, you're going to write that script and people are going to start to recognize aspects of their own character in the characters in your screenplay, because it's a shared human experiences. Breakups suck, whether you're in LA, whether you're in London, whether you're in Dubai, or wherever you are in the world. That's the unique experience we all share. The father, son, mother, the parent bond. Like, there are unique characteristic aspects that we all experience as a global audience that can be told through different parts of the world that we're going to relate to. And throughout the history of Hollywood, you've seen movies from filmmakers from all around the world become huge hits because they were told in places of the country that most of us had never even thought about. And you're like, oh, wow, like, I totally relate to this. And they didn't need millions of dollars to do that. And I think it's because the people that wrote those scripts put the emotion, put the real human experience in those pages, in those words. And when we read it and when we see it acted on a screen, we're like, wow, like, I totally relate to this, even though don't look anything like the characters on the screen right now. I can totally relate to this. I can totally relate to this experience. And it was because it was real. So I encourage writers, if you're going to go into journalism, turn your emotions off. If you're going to go into screenwriting or any type of creative writing, turn those emotions on to 100 and get them all out onto the page, and write down any funny things your friend said. The script I'm working on now, that's what I did. I wrote down, like, I had 4 pages of notes of, like, funny things that had happened to me that my friends had said that we had thought, or just weird experiences. And when I was writing the script, whenever I got stuck on a page and I needed a joke or something like that, I would go through my notes and be like, okay, what can I do here? Sometimes it was just a funny line for a joke. Sometimes it was a whole idea for a scene or an entire sequence for a story. And it was real. Like, this was stuff that actually happened. So I really encourage people to do that. Just anytime you think of something unique that's creative, you're like, that's a good idea. Write it down immediately, because you will forget it. Now you have a phone. You could record it on your phone now. It's so easy to do that. Like, just record yourself saying, and then now you have a stockpile of stuff. And maybe it'll lead to nothing, but you might use it 5 years from now for a script you're writing, or a story you're writing, or a poem you're writing, whatever, a song you're writing. you'll have that. You have a well of experiences, and nobody has the same experiences. Me and you, even if we have similar goals in life, we're going to have different backgrounds. We're going to have different experiences. That's going to give us a different voice. And I think that's the thing people should really understand is your voice is your biggest selling point. And if you have a unique voice based on the unique experiences you shared, it's going to help you stand out.
If you could go back, would you still go the route you've gone?
Honestly, I've recently thought about that. I think there's two ways to have success in this industry. Number one is get a job in the industry you want. That's not necessarily the job you want, but gets you in the room. If you want to be a filmmaker, get a job as a production assistant. Be around writers, be around directors, be around producers, so you learn, so you see how everything works. Be a grip, be a set assistant. Just be on set so you can see how things work. And then you meet people that way. You meet the people that are eventually doing the jobs you want to do, and you become friends with them, and they'll be able to help you, and you can kind of get a leg up that way. So you kind of get a job as a low man on the ladder, and then climb your way up that way. The other, I sometimes wonder where my career would be and what would have happened had I gone that route, because I did have an opportunity when I started my career to get a job doing that. And I chose the opposite path. The opposite path is find a way to support yourself financially while you're pursuing your creative dreams, whatever they may be. Because I don't care what you are, it's hard to be creative when you don't know where your rent's going to be coming from, where you don't know where your next meal is going to come from. And I had friends that were actors that were working menial jobs to support themselves, and it was brutal. It was very, very hard for them. And several of them had to just quit. They had to give up on their dreams because they couldn't afford it. So I was always lucky. I had this other job that paid me pretty well and had the hours that worked for me and enabled me to pursue my career while I was doing this. And I was able to kind of do both tracks simultaneously for 10 years. I mean, I was writing scripts while I had a full-time job. And really the last 10 years, I've been fortunate enough. I haven't had to work full-time. I kind of do when I need to, when things are slow on the screenwriting side. But I do wonder what would have happened if I had gone both routes. Either one will work. I know people that have done both routes and have had success. So find a situation that works for you and do that. But have a source of income for sure, because that's going to be the one thing that's going to keep you from achieving your dreams is, not being able to afford being in the city you need to be in, having the time to go to auditions, to do gigs, to do whatever it is that's going to make you better. You need to be able to do the money to do that. And the one great thing that I found is when I heard, Hollywood, I was like, oh, everyone said it's a brutal industry. They're sharks and they're going to take advantage of you and this and that. I found the exact opposite. I found so many people who were willing to mentor me, I had nothing to offer them. I was a newbie in this business. I had no connections. There was no quid pro quo. I couldn't do anything for their careers to help advance them, but they wanted to help me out because number one, somebody when they were starting out had done the same for them. And number two, especially when you're writers, it's like you want to be around other good writers because if one of them sells a show, then they're going to hire you to write on that show. Or if you're an actor, like, hey, I become a big time actor. I'm going to get my friends in this movie too. Like you pal around with people like that because you're having shared experiences and you're encouraging each other. And if one of you makes it, then all of you can make it. But literally I had people that helped me, like huge, big name people that were just like, man, like, I can't ever repay you for this. And I asked one guy, I was like, can I at least buy you breakfast? And he's like, no. He's like, you're going to buy breakfast for the next guy in 10 years who comes along asking you for help. And I just always took that. And I found the kindness here is amazing because people have all experienced terrible, awful things and they don't want other people to go through that. And so they try to kind of, pay it forward in a way or pay it back from somebody that helps them out. So, if you keep putting in the work, you'll be surprised. The mentor will appear. Like when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. So that's what I would like to tell people is, once you start your career in the industry, you'll be surprised at how many people are willing to help you, who have knowledge they can pass along, connections they can pass on. So just keep grinding, man. That's the main thing.
That's class. Is there anybody you'd like to shout out in particular who helped you?
A guy I met with, his name was Kyle Harimoto. He wrote on, he was writing for a show called Las Vegas at the time, and then later later writing for Hawaii 5-0. So tough life, man. He had to go to Hawaii to write. But I met with him maybe 20 years ago now almost. And he was a family friend. I'd never met him before. And he just passed along information and knowledge to me just about like the industry, about what to do, but what he would need. And I like literally, I literally asked him like, can I, he took his time out of his schedule to meet with me. I was so grateful for him. And he literally just told me, he's like, no, cause somebody met with me 10 years ago and helped me out. So I'm just paying them back for that. So you can do it for the next guy. And I was just always blown away because, he had no connection to me. He was a friend of a friend, really. And he agreed to help me out. And I was really grateful for that. A guy I'm working on now on a project called City on Fire. His name's Ken Nolan. He wrote Black Hawk Down. He wrote the last Transformers movie, huge A-list screenwriter. And he's been great too, just like offering, tips here and there, just to help. Like his big thing is like a lot of times with rewriting, it's like, don't take a sledgehammer to something, take a scalpel. Like sometimes it's a very minor change you need will set everything else in motion. And like, I write something and he would rewrite it. And I'm like, I can't even figure out what you changed, but it's way better. And like, that's why like it's just, microscopic things that you can do, are great. And that was a really good tip to learn. So, but I mean, you'll be shocked. Like you'll be shocked how kind people are. Like there are the sharks, there are the a-holes here, but a lot of times they'll get exposed pretty quickly, especially now, which is a good thing in this industry. But you will be surprised. It's not going to be as cutthroat as you've heard. You will have people willing to help you if they see that you really, really want this and you really have the work ethic to get it through and you really have the desire to get better at whatever craft it is you're pursuing. Like I'm serious, when you are ready, the mentor, the teacher will appear. And so the one thing that has always kept me going early in my career and even now, every day you stay in the game, 5 people quit. So whatever your goal is, there are going to be times where you're like, I can't do this anymore. I want to quit. I want to be done. There are other people around the world that are competing with you that are saying the same thing and they will quit. So if you stick it out, eventually by attrition, you might have some success, but you will get there. So just stick it out, change it up. If you're not having success in what you're trying to do, figure out why am I not succeeding? What can I do to change it? But just don't quit.
That's fantastic advice. That's really, really well put forward. Ken Nolan, legend.
Yes.
I love Black Hawk Down.
Oh.
Funnily enough, I think, was it the gentleman out of Heat? I forget his name. He's in Heat and he's in Saving Private Ryan. He's opposite.
Tom Sizemore. Yeah, he was in Black Hawk Down. Just passed away, yeah.
Sad. I always really liked him on screen. Very talented. Like they say, you just, some actors, they just have it on screen. He had it. He had a charisma to him. You couldn't take your eyes off him. I really appreciated him as an actor. Really sad. So to Tom's family, may rest in eternal peace and what a career and joy he took to audiences around the world. The difference between you writing independently when you've sold a script on to being actually employed by Disney, how different is it?
I mean, yeah, you're writing independently. You can write whatever you want because it's your story. It's your idea. When you write for Disney, you're writing for a company that's been in existence for longer than I've been alive. So they have a track record. They have, parents trust Disney because they watch Disney as a kid. They trust their kids watching it because they know it's going to be wholesome. It's going to be family entertainment. And that's a lot of pressure because you are now writing, you're a Disney writer. You have to write with that in mind. You can't just, you can write whatever you want. So it's funny, but I had a great experience there. It was awesome. They were very supportive. I'll, definitely go back to writing for them in a heartbeat. And they also have really smart people that are executives now that are they're going to give you great notes on your stories. They're going to help guide you. So it was a great experience, but yeah, writing for other people, it's tough because you kind of have to neuter yourself in some respects because you might want to tell a story one way, but that's not how they want the story told. But that's the game, man. Like if somebody pays you to write a script, like you have to, like any product, like any business, you have to give the customer what they want. And in this case, Disney was a customer. So I had to give them what they wanted. And even if it was written in a way that I wouldn't necessarily have done it, if it was me by myself, it doesn't mean it's right or wrong. But, they're paying the bills, man. So you got to do what they want.
Yeah, I totally get that. I heard an interview from Quentin Tarantino, and the guy said, obviously, he'd wrote his own script. He's not employed by them. It's a completely different beast. Because if I employed you and you were a bricklayer or a window fitter,
Right.
I'm paying you for what I need. Come on, do you
Right.
do that or not? So I get it, and I understand
Yeah.
that. But I love Tarantino, and the guy says, "I take it to a production company." This is when he's starting out as well.
Yeah.
It's just after True Romance, and it's with Reservoir Dogs, and he takes it across, and he's like, yeah, this is what I've got. And they'll go, but can you change this? He goes, no.
Yeah. It's
Take it elsewhere. But that,
right.
and let me just add this part in, Pat, right? Okay, there's three, tell me if I'm wrong, there's three character arcs. Yeah?
Yeah.
Main character arcs, positive, flat, negative. Okay?
Yeah.
Which one changes the world?
Positive positive and negative can change the world.
But what you seem to find is the flat arc changes the world around them because it refuses to change.
Right. Some of my favorite movies have flat arc. Beverly Hills Cop, Eddie Murphy's character doesn't change through 3 movies, but the world changes around him and it's hilarious. Forrest Gump won Tom Hanks an Oscar. He never changed, but yeah, and that's, that comes from being, true to your own, having a viewpoint. That's right. It sucks sometimes because, you're getting especially in the studio system, you write a script, it's getting reviewed. You're basically getting notes from people that have never written anything in their life, So
this is what I'm saying.
This is what you're getting writing advice from people that can't write. So you're like, okay, this is very weird, but they're also your bosses. So there is an art in taking notes and trying to figure out, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're wrong, but they might get hung up on something in your script. Like, okay, this needs to change here. And their idea for how to change that is completely wrong. But you have to kind of listen to like, okay, what's the note? Okay, it starts to get boring at page 65. I have to find a way to change that. The way they suggested changing it is terrible. It will never work. So thank you for the note. I'll figure it out from here. But yeah, it is a very different beast when you're doing the studio system. But it makes you a better writer because you kind of have to learn that this is a collaborative process. And unless you are a Tarantino who's going to write and direct his own thing and has his own style and can hire his own actors to execute that style, most of us will never get to that level. And that's okay. You're still going to have a successful career. You just have to learn it's a collaborative process. And a lot of times that collaboration makes your stuff better. I'll write a script and there's a lot of times the actor will deliver a line in a way better than I intended. That'll make it funny. That'll make it emotional. That'll make it this or that. I'll get credit for that. People are like, wow, your script was so emotional. I'm like, no, it wasn't. I just had great actors. So, learn that a lot of times those notes, you may not agree with them at the time. They will make your project better. And you just have to figure out a way to kind of implement other people's visions with your own to get the best project out there in the world. I
don't agree with notes at all. Don't agree with them. I agree with the cues. I understand. Listen, it's human interaction. This bit's a bit dry. For instance, if it's, let's say, got a female character, I'm reading it as a female. I respect that. I respect that because you will always know more than me because I am a male. So I would write this way. So guys get it more, but I know myself.
Right.
So my point is that I can't accept that. I can't accept it. If you've never wrote anything of substance, you're going to tell me. I just cannot get it into my head. For me, it doesn't make any sense. It's like, for instance, your father, what did he do? What did he do as a living?
He was in the travel business. Helped businesses kind of organize their travel schedule. So he worked in the travel industry for years. Okay,
let's go back in time. I'm his boss. I know nothing about it. Do this.
Yeah.
Doesn't make any sense, does it?
No.
Why do we do it?
In most other industries, you do a job, you do that job really well, you get promoted, and now you're overseeing other people doing that job. So you have a lot of experience and wisdom to pass on to those people, and that makes you a good boss. In Hollywood or any place where London, wherever there's a big film industry or TV industry, the people that are in charge of, saying yes or no to shows or movies, a lot of times haven't done that. They don't promote writers to become studio heads. Like, I don't think it's ever happened. So like, you're not going to even development people aren't former writers, so it is weird, man. It is a weird beast, but you're going to have to learn like, okay, I don't want to be seen as difficult here. So I have to take these notes, which might be terrible, which I completely unagree with. I have to find a way to give them what they want in a way that makes me happy still. And that's that's really the key to success in any industry. Like this isn't, unless you have the bankroll to make your own projects, you're gonna, in any business, like you have to listen to other people. And it sucks, but it's the way of the world. And you get better at it as you get older.
Yeah, you know what? I totally hear all that. I get it.
It still doesn't make it easier. It sucks. Believe me, no,
you know what it is, Tom? I am fully focused and committed to go out there and change it. That is my mission. My mission is to go and change it. You know, I get it. It's difficult. You're a father and a husband within a family. I get it. You know, you gotta do what you need to do, and you're having huge successes, massive. You've lived the life that many people dream of getting to. You've already got there. You've achieved it. You know, you've wrote a short, a feature, and an animation. Yeah. You've been in journalism on the hard side and the sports side.
Yeah.
You know, feet away or in front of the best in the world at whatever sport. That's legendary. Do you know what I mean? You've achieved huge things.
Thank you so much for having me on, man. It was great to talk to you, and you know, I learned probably more than you learned. So thank you for your wisdom as well and having me on here.
It's been an honor. To all of our audience, stay great and be seen. This is Pat O'Connor tuning out.
Keep fighting, people.